name's Jason, and this is Just Watches. Alright, today we have an NTH Baraccuda in vintage black. Now, I have wanted to check out NTH for a long time, and in particular, this exact model. So when I saw a used one for a great price, I had to pick it up. I have heard the gilt dial on this watch is amazing in person, and it seems like a good way to test the idea of owning a Tudor Black Bay 58 someday. However, before we begin the review, I want to remind you that if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So price and availability. At the time of this recording, this watch appears to be sold out on the NTH website, but it is available for purchase at longislandwatch.com for $700. So starting with the case, it's 40 millimeters in diameter. It's 47.5 millimeters lug to lug, but the solid end links do increase the lug to lug distance to 52 millimeters. It's very thin at only 11.5 millimeters thick, and then it has a 20 millimeter lug width opening. The top of the case is brushed, and the brushing is very consistent into the end links. There is a high polished chamfer along the edge of the case before the finishing returns to brushing along the sides. The case is very thin, which makes the watch extremely comfortable. The lugs are pierced, which helps with strap changes. Now, while the end links do extend the lug-to-lug distance overall, they do curve sharply down, which helps with the wear. Sized up for my 6 3/4 inch wrist, it weighs in at 140 grams. The 3-link bracelet tapers from 20 millimeters down to 18 millimeters. The solid end link has excellent fit to the head of the watch with zero play. The articulation across the back of the watch is also excellent, as is the articulation between the individual links. The links are very thin, something I haven't experienced before. I'm not sure if this is to emulate a vintage feel, but the bracelet is very comfortable. The clasp is one widely used by micro brands with the safety catch and double push deployment. The scissor is nicely milled, and there are 6 micro positions. Sizing is easily accomplished with screw links. All you need is a 1mm screwdriver. The screw-in caseback helps with 300 meters of water resistance. It's quite sterile overall with just some data there in the center. This watch is powered by the Miyota 9039, which I much prefer to the NH35 you usually find in microbrands. This is a 28,800 vibration per hour hacking hand-winding movement with a 42-hour power reserve and a stated accuracy of -10 to +30 seconds per day. However, NTH indicates they regulate the movement to -5 to +15 seconds per day. Also, nice attention to detail here. This is a dateless movement, so you do not have a ghost position. The 7mm screw-down crown is nicely knurled and signed with the NTH logo. At one time, it was also lumed, which is a really cool detail, but the lume actually wore off the crown. The crown is a nice size to operate the watch, and the threading and unthreading action is smooth. The crystal is a double-domed sapphire with anti-reflective coating, 2 details I always like to see on a watch. The crystal sits ever so slightly proud of the bezel. The 120-click unidirectional bezel has a cog gear edge that is easy to grip. The operation is very clicky and tactile with no backplay, and everything lines up nicely. The bezel insert is steel with a nice red triangle at 12 and alternating dashes and very crisp Arabic numerals to designate time. These markers are also loomed with C3, which you will see in the Lume shot. The dial uses gilt relief, which is absolutely gorgeous in person and almost impossible to capture on camera. The dial itself is matte black. Starting at the edge of the dial is a half railroad track. The edges of the indices, the NTH logo at 12, and the text at 6 o'clock are all done in gilt relief as well. The effect is difficult to describe, but the gold color shimmers as light moves across these details, and it is very alluring. This is the Note 8 version, which is very clean. Orientation is assisted by the triangle at 12 and the 3 dashes for the indices at 3, 6, and 9. Finally, I love that Baraccuda is written at red at the 6 o'clock position. It ties in nicely with the other red details of the watch. The handset consists of an hour hand, which is in the snowflake style, and a minute hand in a long baton style. Both are filled with C3 lume and edged in gold. The gold color matches the other gold details very nicely. The minute hand is plenty long, reaching all the way to the dashes for the minutes at the edge of the dial. The second hand is also long with a square loomed lollipop about 3/4 of the way down. Only the second hand features a counterbalance. While normally I prefer gable hands to flat ones, the hands work here and are very cohesive with the rest of the watch. The lume is very bright and responsive, and you can see it is holding its own against a Seiko here, which is another lume monster. And on the Timegrapher here, dial up, it's just within the regulated range of plus 15 seconds a day, so I will give them credit for that, but just barely. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. Despite the extra length from those solid end lengths, I think it does work here. And then as you can see, it's very thin and rides very low and tight to the wrist. It's a very comfortable watch overall. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, the gilt dial is definitely the highlight of this watch and is really well executed. To appreciate it fully, you're going to have to see it in person. Also, the case on this watch is incredibly thin and very comfortable on a bracelet. Finally, I love the fact that the bezel is loomed. As for cons, my only major con on this watch, besides the price which we'll get into later, is that the end links add to the lug-to-lug distance overall. I would love to see a future version of this watch with an inverted end link to retain the nice 47.5mm lug-to-lug distance of the case. So is this watch worth the money? Well, there's no question this is a very nice watch with an impressive set of specifications, but with an MSRP of $700, it is a bit more expensive than the watches I usually review on this channel. I also find it interesting that used NTH watches tend to sell between $450 and $550, which is closer to what I think is the correct price point for this watch. As always, I recognize that value isn't the only reason people buy a watch, and price is relative to your own personal financial situation. So there you have it, the NTH Baraccuda in vintage black. What do you guys think about this watch? Leave me a comment in the comment section below. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.